I think it is so important for women and men to learn how to really sharpen their sword of discernment, specifically when it comes to dating and in all of life. Because when we don't have that radar within ourselves, we can make choices and decisions and fall into relationships that are actually depleting us versus enlivening our spirit.
I've been guilty of that. So as I'm sure you have, just how you know this work and fall into discernment. This is an awesome, I do a lot of work with helping women rebuild trust. And one of the common pushbacks I get is like, well, you should trust men. And I'm like, well, yeah, there are some men that aren't freaking trustworthy. And it's important to have that
Mm.
discernment to know, can I open to somebody? Is this actually a safe space, or is this my hurt or my trauma? So what's been your path with that, and how have you been able to sharpen that discernment?
Yeah. So feel you in that, and thank you for asking. It's been a journey. I would say around 8 years ago is when I started to really understand the even that there's a distinction between intuition and discernment. I feel
Oof.
intuition is a little more feminine and discernment is a little more of like a masculine energetic. And it started when I dated a man when I was 24 years old. So I'll be 31 very soon. And he was twice my age. He was 48. And which is crazy to think about now. And I see how it was daddy issues and healing all of that. And, we had such a karmic contract, if you will. And he was definitely one of my first teachers in the area of discernment. And I learned so much from him. And through that relationship, I saw, how I didn't feel whole within myself. I felt parts of me were broken. So I would like seek outside myself for that void that I didn't know how to fill inside of me. And ever since then, I have repeated that pattern a few times where I would feel and think like, oh, this could be my guy. This is him. And I'm just someone who like loves love. Like I love to love so much. And through that, yeah, through the unraveling, I just got to feel into the most subtle energetics of, let's say, the typical red flags, but some of them weren't as apparent as others. So I got to really learn the most tiny, subtle energetics of gaslighting, manipulation. A lot of women call it like the spiritual fuckboy. And through, yeah, the last, 7, 8 years, I can now just really pick up on the ways that I would, again, give my power away and the ways that I can see when a man is showing up and is not fully integrated within himself. But it's been not the easiest journey at all.
Well, very important. Subtleties is really what I want to highlight there, because I think sometimes people get caught up in
Mm.
the big obvious ways. Oh, that's gaslighting. But sometimes it happens in these really subtle ways. And then, you go into things and you're like, wait, how the fuck did I even end up here? So I kind of want to get into some of the nitty gritty. Yeah,
Okay.
same. I want to
Yes.
get into some of the
I'm
nitty
like
gritty
pointing to
of
myself here.
what what does that look like? Could you give examples? Are you open to sharing
Mm.
anything from your
Yes,
story?
definitely. Absolutely. So I would say one thing is moving very quickly in a connection. And this isn't always the case, but it's what I've found for myself. When, let's say, a man is constantly telling you, like, you're so beautiful, you're so sexy, like a lot in the beginning, while that can feel so yummy and delicious, and I will like call myself out. Just recently, I had a connection that this showed up, and I was single for 7 months, been in a journey of celibacy, and me and this guy actually had a connection 2 years ago, and we circled back
Mm.
around. We had stayed friends, and I would feel like these little pangs of like, that feels just a little like jarring or a little much. But because I was so deep in my longing, there was that part of me that just said, oh, yes, I just want to be showered with love. So I would say for me, where I'm at in my journey now is like the slow burn. That's what I desire, is like this slow burn, not this like fast, intense energy, which some people can think is good. Like, wow, there was all this chemistry. I don't understand what happened. I feel that when there's that intensity so much right from the start, it's actually not always the greatest sign. So that's one thing that I'll share here and call myself out, that I'm someone who just loves to dive in. My heart is so open. I'm like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
And then, you kind of peel the layers and just some of the darkness and shadows may come up.
Well, that's the whole thing too, right? I think the definition of trauma is something too much too soon. You just can't. It's just an injection of quick and fast. You're not able to fully see the full picture yet. You don't actually know somebody in their fullness. It takes a long time to really get to know somebody. And even people that have been married for 10 plus years still are trying to figure out who their partner is, because everybody's changing all the time. Like, I think
Totally.
it's very. So I love that you mentioned the difference between intuition and discernment. I'm under the belief that you need to access your intuition to understand the discernment of what's truly here. How do you build connection with your intuition?
Love this question. So my body is one of those highly sensitive bodies. And for me, it usually is in my gut. It is absolutely in my gut. And I can track the countless relationships where I would, like, usually what happens is I'll feel anxious. Like, I'll feel just this anxiety in my stomach, like feels like my heartbeat is down in my stomach. I'm like, okay, that's a sign something's off. And then also I will get like clogged up. Like, I won't be able to go to the bathroom. And that's if I'm staying in a relationship that isn't really serving me. So those are some of the ways for me. And it's a very body sensation thing, which I know isn't for everyone. And yeah, I can just track to a relationship within the last year, someone I was dating, and we were doing long distance. I was in Tulum, Mexico. He was in Nashville, and we were starting to deepen once I left for my trip. And our agreements weren't super clear. And this is something that I was like, wow, how could I do this? I'm a relationship coach, well, okay, another lesson. And long story short, I knew he was going to see a lover, but I didn't know the extent of it. And he was with her for an entire week and was sleeping with her. Excuse me. And that whole week, I had insomnia. The most intense anxiety in my body was just so off. Like, I could literally feel it happening in my womb. And I wasn't aware that he was with her. And then I finally asked, and then he told me. And it was so heavy on my heart. I'm like, wow, how could I do this with myself? How could I thought was one thing and he thought was another thing. So this just goes back to like sharpening, even not discernment, but communication and agreements. And so that's how, for me, intuition shows up is so much of a body thing, but then my mind will want to override it.
I think that's so common for people. I mean, myself included, where we're like, you give them the benefit of the doubt, or, oh, but it's something else. It's what I ate, or something. And you're like, no, dude, it's this, your intuition's really freaking loud. Like, I don't know. I hear you on that. How,
and I've ignored it.
Oh yeah, I've ignored it too. How, in your experience, do you discern what your intuition is trying to tell you versus what's a response in your system from some trauma from the past that may not actually be accurate to what's happening in the present? Because that's another one.
Breathe into that one.
Yeah, and I've done it too. It's like, oh, this isn't safe, but it's the safest actual place you could be. Or you judge them as wrong, and it's like, well, they haven't done anything yet for you to have that intuitive hit,
Absolutely. Okay, so the way that I will discern if it's really my intuition versus trauma is I feel the way that I feel when I'm around this person is a really big indicator. How safe, how relaxed does my body feel in this person's presence? And how easily and effortlessly can I communicate how I'm feeling with this person? and then how do they receive it? So I feel it's a, and this is where I really start in a lot of the work I do is cultivating that true safety within yourself. Well, what does it feel like to feel safe in my body and then around another person? So I know when I feel afraid to speak my full truth and get really vulnerable, which is like my juice, what I love doing. When I feel afraid to do that, it's usually a sign, not sure if this person's fully safe to open up, if that makes sense.
Totally does. So you're
Mm-hmm.
looking at the overall picture of the interactions that you're having, not necessarily one particular moment or not. Kind of zooming out.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. And, with this last guy, and he's got a great heart. Like, he's got the goodness and just some of the dark overshadows that. There were just subtle things going back to a little bit of your previous question, that he would say things like, you feel so good. Like, you feel so good. And thanks for sharing your light with me, which is not a bad thing to say. But when he would say it, my body would go into this little contraction. I'd be like, I don't know about that. And then later I realized, I was like, oh, fuck, he was feeding off of my Shakti light.
Whoa.
And then I realized, like, whoa, like, and then I kind of just tracked all the little subtle things that I overlooked because there were those fireworks, because there was like, ooh, like this could be it.
And that's the
And
difference
he
between
was saying a lot of these things like, I want to
yeah.
devote to you, I want to choose to you. So it was kind of a mind fuck.
And that's how manipulation happens. This is a mind fuck, and we just disassociate from our body, and we get caught up and wrapped up in the head. And I think that in that subtle
Totally.
ways, your body was able to pick on, oh, this was a taking energy, not a giving energy, which was
disguised as giving
danger.
in some way.
Right. Yeah, man. This is so I'm just going to speak for a second on some stuff that pisses me off.
Yeah.
The ways that a lot of men show up in the healing spaces and with women and manipulate, or they're actually not safe. Nothing pisses me off more. It's quite literally why I do the work that I do. And I've noticed even in women who are really have refined discernment and stuff can find themselves in situations that aren't safe. And it's like new level, new devil. Like there's levels to manipulation. You can get really freaking good at it where it doesn't feel like manipulation. And it's like, look, but I'm giving to you. And your body's like, something's off. But you don't listen to it because there's no evidence for it. And you're disconnected from your body. And I don't know. I just want to mention that. It really pisses me off. And I think for everybody listening, it's important to always put your power back into your body. Literally, what is your body saying? And if you don't know if it's your trauma or your intuition, if it's still there and it's present on repeat, do you and follow it. Like, you're not wrong for, even if it is a trauma response, getting out of something. You'll find a space and a time to release it and heal it, and maybe somewhere different. That's okay. And I think we try to like make it this thing because you're committed to the work and you want to liberate yourself. And it's like, yes, liberate yourself, but please in the right spaces. I had a near-death experience with somebody because it wasn't a safe space with plant medicine. Like I'm a huge advocate for this work. And I just know I've heard so many stories of women getting abused in safe spaces, in healing spaces, in personal development spaces, whatever it is, with manipulation from men. And y'all are love as I do, and you want to give people the benefit of the doubt, but please don't disconnect from your body.
Yes. Woo! I'm like cheering over here, like wanted to snap, like thank you for sharing that. I can feel your passion and that you've experienced it yourself, the unsafety. And it sounds like you've, been around a lot of women that have had this happen, which is, it boils my blood for sure, because I've been in countless experiences myself. And I pride myself on a woman who knows herself, is clear. And then sometimes there's just this thing that happens. And, this recent experience was like, thank God it was just very short lived. It was a little just a little blip. And I felt God was kind of like, hey, honey, you've cleared this already. Nuh-uh. Like, not this again. Right. I'm like, oh, damn. How, like, I felt a little blindsided because I was like, I know this energy. So, yeah, I really appreciate you sharing that. And I'm also incredibly passionate about um, just the word that's coming through is like the false tantra healer as well, because I've also teach in the tantric realms, and I've experienced a lot of that, and that, like, ooh, I guess me mad.
There's so many layers to this, you know. The devil's the angel of light, you know, like
Mm,
it looks like light, but it ain't. And
yeah.
you know, Satan can quote the Bible too, type thing. They talk the talk doesn't mean they walk the walk.
Mm.
They get in the right shoes doesn't mean that that's actually who they are. And so that's why discernment is so important in knowing yourself. The more you can know yourself, the more you can know your discernment, at least in my experience in my life. Um,
Amen to that.
yeah, yeah. I just am glad we're talking about this because, you know, and I think one of the things that could be baited are your insecurities, which is why it's important to dive into our insecurities or our desires. It's one or the other. Um, and doing that work ourselves as much as possible with people that we deeply trust is how you become more immune to that level of manipulation. Because if you want something so bad you'll do anything, you can get manipulated. There it is.
Yep.
But if you're
So
like, yeah,
true.
I want to work on this thing, I'm not going to do anything for it, but yeah, I want to work on it, you're unfuckwithable.
Yes. Yes. And
So,
it's what an empowering place to stand in, knowing that, wow, I'm currently in a place in my life where I'm just not going to settle for anything less than what I know I'm worthy of and deserving of. And also, like, well, what am I bringing to a relationship? What am I bringing to a connection? I think a lot of people are like, what are they going to bring me? And who do I want my ideal king or queen to be? And okay, but who am I being as well? That's going to, yes, bring that person in. And that's why, like, kind of turning back, and I'm someone who really stands in like full self ownership and responsibility. And so even with this recent connection, I'm like, oh, I see where I can take ownership, right? And then even when I'm in sisterhood or partnerships, like, where can I take responsibility of my part as well, and then communicate from that place.
mhm. And it's a very empowering path to take, liberating path to take as
Mm.
well, because now you're not out there pointing finger, blaming, and
Mhm.
hating another gender or society or whatever it is. So I kind of want to take a quick turn to talking about somatic work, because we've been talking a lot about it,
Mm.
intuition being a feeling, discernment being a feeling. You'll know, and you'll have this subtle feeling, and it's like tuning the antenna of your body to be able to feel those subtleties is really important. And so, and I think somatics is plays a big role in that. And so I'd love to hear from you and your experience and from your expertise. How does one begin to actually feel more to where they're more connected to that intuition and discernment?
Love this. So the first thing that is coming through is your breath and slowing down with your breathing. So I work with people that are, kind of sometimes very in just the like doing, go, 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 next thing, next thing, next thing. And so slowing down to pause, to actually just sit and be with yourself. And something that I love inviting people into is mirror work, and sitting with yourself fully, sometimes naked, in front of the mirror, and just like piercing through your own eyes and looking into your soul and having a conversation between you and you. Um, that's such, I don't know why I love starting there. It's like, it's the most intimate thing that you could do with yourself, to fully see yourself in your rawness, which will then illuminate, like, all right, what are the stories? What are the insecurities? What's showing up? What am I feeling and seeing when I look at myself in my body? So that's one of the places that I love starting with people. And it usually is extremely confronting for those who, just don't want to look at themselves entirely.
I love that you started there. Confrontation. Just look at yourself, like literally. And that's much more my approach to things as well. So I love it because I think a lot of people could be, go into different modalities or ways of feeling. And it's like when you fully see yourself, you'll have access to more of yourself. You ain't running from anything anymore.
Absolutely. Totally. Like when I've done this a lot over the last, I mean, probably decade of my life. And there's always more layers. And I just remember after like a breakup over the last 2 years, I just sat in front of the mirror and I was like, wow, I feel so unworthy in this moment because this man didn't choose me. And then what I got to see was I unconsciously put my worthiness on if a man was going to choose me or not. And then I just had to remind myself, honey, that is not how this works. And had to literally, like, I do energy work as well. And I did a lot of energetic field work on myself and just like brought myself back into wholeness. I was like, this is where your wholeness starts. It doesn't depend on another man choosing you.
Yeah, especially like if he doesn't choose you, it has maybe nothing to do with you. You're not looking for like every man that you like to choose you. Like
Exactly.
maybe it's just not his preference. Okay, cool. You can still be powerful and worthy. I find that a lot
Yeah,
in the dating scene.
exactly. And so now,
People, yeah, are like trying to find. I don't know. They're like sick of the culture or the patterns, and it's like, dude, you're trying to find one person. Like, don't let your experiences get in the way of that. Like being persistent.
yeah, absolutely. So important. And so now kind of going a little more into the somatics, got a little sidetracked there, but it's important because that's like it's the experiences that happen that will bring you back into like, okay, how do I work through this through my body? And I've been a dancer my entire life, so like movement has always been the thing for me. And then when I got more into somatics, it's been like breath and sounds as well. So it's releasing what you're feeling through any way that it wants to be expressed. So for me, it's like breath, movement, sound. Those are like the three that I work with the most. And it's like that cathartic release. And what really supports is somebody guiding you through an experience. When you feel like there's maybe something trapped in your body or you feel suppressed or you can't identify what emotions you're feeling, this is what I love like guiding people through, is asking them questions so that they can get out of the logic and like into the feeling, which can take time when like there's someone who's so in their head. It's like I don't know. And people also, I have found like there's a lot of fear of feeling because they're afraid to get stuck there. Like, I'm afraid I'm going to get stuck in my anger. I'm going to get stuck in this grief. Sometimes it does feel like, wow, this grief is just so deep. Is it ever going to end? And it always will. And it's so important, I believe, to know how to go into it, let it move, and then alchemize it back into like stability, back
Right.
into love.
Yeah, that's big on like the fear of getting stuck there. It's like, well, if I dip my toe in it, then it's going to be my entire identity, and I'll just be a ball and a mess. It's like, if not necessarily, especially if you're being guided. That's a really important piece to this. So, very basic question, but how does somebody feel their feelings? I think we've gotten really good at all the modalities and all the things and mindset and everything, and it's like sometimes you just get to feel your feelings, and I've said that to people and they're like, okay, but how? I'm curious what your answer to that is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let me tune in on that for a moment here. So interesting. I think I've been doing it for so long. Like I've just always been a deep feeler. So it I am someone that it comes maybe a little more, I don't want to say natural, but it's a little more easy for me. So it's almost like, wow, okay, let me like track back to the times where, yeah, of course there are times I'm like, oh wow, I'm distracting right now. I'm not allowing myself to feel. And so how someone feels their feelings, the word that's coming through is like allowing and reminding yourself that you're safe. And if you feel like there's something that needs to move through you, can you ask it a question? So if you're more cerebral and logical, Maybe you can ask yourself a question. What do I need right now to know that I'm okay to let this move through me? That question alone, it's like, okay, I need a hug. I need to squeeze my pillow. I need to call a friend. So it's really always coming back to this place of safety is I feel where it starts, where you can then, okay, I'm safe to feel this, because once you feel it, once you let yourself cry, have a huge freaking cry, once you let yourself get in your car and scream if you need to, once you let yourself just like crack open to your knees, there is such a freedom and liberation in that. And I believe that's how you have a deeper connection to source, is where you feel deeply.
I agree with that. It's really good on like going cerebral with it, asking yourself questions, work with your mind to guide yourself there. That's really smart.
Yeah. I was like, at first, I was like, I don't know actually how you feel your feelings. You just
I
do
just
it.
do it.
I had to like kind of think about it. I'm like, okay, kind of put myself in the mind of someone who's like, I'm also actually, I'm a Virgo and like, I'm very in my head a lot. But I also am a deep feeler. So I kind of have like both. So I just, yeah, just kind of like had to tap into like, what would be supportive for someone who has, you know, more of a challenge of like fully feeling and being in their body.
Yeah,
I'm glad that came through.
definitely. Definitely. Well, awesome tips and tools here for sure. So I hope that everybody tuning in is taking some
Mm,
notes. It's been a really juicy conversation. We've kind of been going a lot of different places. Uh, when it
yeah.
comes to your work right now and supporting people, what does that really look like? And what you're creating right now and what's present for you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So I would say there's a few like big themes that I'm really loving supporting people with. And one of them is a lot around artful communication in relationships. And all relationships doesn't have to just be romantic. And what this looks like is using like your body as art to communicate something that you're working through with somebody,
Okay,
and
tell me more
also
about that.
using your voice. Yeah, so I believe that like one of my, I know this is like in my chart, like I am here to communicate, and when I don't communicate, I my astrologer's like, you will literally burst, like you will literally blow up. Which I love. I'm like, yes, oh my god, yes. So I, over the years, I have been able to articulate what it is that I need, desire, require, or if I'm triggered about something in a way that just really lands for people. And I've had so many lovers share this with me, so many friends and my clients. Um, and I think it's just kind of like a gift that I've sharpened and that God has given me. And when I support a client in communication, in something that, again, a desire that she has in the bedroom that she doesn't know how to communicate with her partner, or when she gets triggered, my clients will tell me like, wow, I am literally communicating like night and day. I didn't know that this was possible, because a lot of people are like in the reaction, you know, or I don't know, I'm not safe to share this. Am I going to be too needy? Is it too much? Or am I not enough? So that's one part, is really dropping into the heart. I help people how to drop into the heart. And this is why I'm so such a stand for embodiment and somatics, because I believe when you are in your body and in your heart, you're not thinking so much about what you want to say, but it's actually something that's like moving through you. It's moving through your heart. And I have a saying, when you speak from your heart, you can't go wrong. You could say, you could say fuck you a few different ways. And sometimes if you say fuck you from your heart, there's an essence about it, right? Where you're like, oh, fuck you. And you presence it. So that's one thing. And then the moving it through your body. I'll give a quick example with this guy that I mentioned earlier, one of them, where he was with a lover, was sleeping with a lover for the week, and I wasn't fully aware of it. the way that we alchemized it was I didn't blame him or make him wrong. Like, I definitely was freaking angry and felt so hurt. And what we did was we FaceTimed. And instead of speaking so much about how I was feeling, which I did a little bit, I revealed my whole body to him in a way where I moved the energy through me, and I squeezed myself and I contracted and I cried and I held my hair and I got messy, and I just had him witness me, and I asked him to do this. And so it was like I showed him the impact of what he did, how it impacted me through my body. And he was so moved at the end and was like, I have never experienced anything like this, Hannah. This was just like unbelievable that he could feel, he's like, wow, I could just see how precious your heart was. And so I feel that this is a way that people can really alchemize tension and stickiness in a relationship, when you can show somebody, this is how you touched my heart. So that's part of the work that I love teaching my clients right now.
That's beautiful. You're acting it out. You're like showing them, not necessarily through words and telling them, which I think is different, especially when it comes to communication. Not a lot of people think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then when you're in a couple relationship and you're together, because we were doing long distance, I will invite people into like primal play. And that's both of them kind of acting it out through their bodies. And what happens a lot of the time is it will alchemize into erotic energy. And then you have great sex after. So that's really yummy too. It's like both people are moving it and roaring it and hissing it out through their body. I'm all about alchemy. That's my juice, is teaching people how to alchemize the densest, heaviest emotions that we can feel back into erotic energy, back into love, back into joy and peace.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Loving that it all ties in together. I'm curious, what in you didn't blame? How were you able to just say, I'm hurt and I'm not going to blame this other person?
So, great question. I would say there was that part of me. There were two parts. So the way that I wasn't fully like telling him like, how could you do this to me kind of thing, is actually giving myself permission to feel that part of me first. And I kind of did it on my own. So I allowed myself to feel the betrayal, to feel the deceit. And I was like, fuck, this is like touching on this deep wound of feeling deceived by men once again. And I feel betrayed by him. I feel abandoned by him. So it wasn't about suppressing any of that. It was allowing myself to be with it and just acknowledging it and saying that to him. Like, I am having this experience where I'm like, my betrayal wound is being touched right now by you, but I'm not saying you betrayed me. There's a distinction, right? So it's like I'm taking ownership of the wound that's getting touched and presencing it, acknowledging it, so that I don't have to hold on to this grudge and like make him the problem.
Which is tying it back to the beginning, more on discernment. You were able to discern that there were two parts of you and you chose which one to present and which one was more, and how you wanted to show up.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's not easy work. Like it takes such a deep level of inner strength and devotion, and yeah, and it comes back to the feeling, like, damn, to feel that betrayal, to feel this energy of betrayal, it's painful at times, but it's so much more freeing than holding on to a grudge.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
What gives you that strength and courage? Why do you feel you have it? And what have you seen from other people? Why do they have it? To be able to lean in and do that work? Because it's always easier to blame somebody else.
Yeah. It's funny when you ask that, I noticed myself getting emotional. I think it honestly comes from being knocked down by life countless times, going through so many events in my life that just ripped me apart, where I was like, God, I don't know if I'm going to make it in this world. Like deep stuff, more than, like, yes, relationships, tumultuous heartbreaks. I had a near death experience like a year and a half ago. And I've traveled through like the depths of darkness that someone can touch, of like not questioning, what am I doing here? Why am I here? And I've been through that journey of hell and back so many times. And it's because I feel my deep connection to God that has helped me come back into that place and has built resilience. And I feel that resilience is built from the lessons and the experiences that you go through, knowing that I am here for a reason and I matter, and to stop doubting if you're meant to be here. So I feel that is how I've built this inner strength, is this continuous remembrance of I am here for a reason, and I get to sharpen that why. I get to go through these, initiations that God has put out for me so that I can embody it, live it, and then teach it.
Amen. And that's exactly what you're doing. And I see you in doing that. And I just want to say thank you for your courage and your strength to go through all that you went through, that you shared, and stuff that you didn't, to get here and to share that with the world, honestly. And I know you before we recorded, words are hard sometimes. You had shared that you were up to some stuff you were creating. I'd love to hear a little bit more about your offerings, and for everybody else who's tuning in to know where they can find you.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So right now I do have openings for one-on-one work with me. So this is a 6-week or sometimes 3 months process, where I take people through what's called embodied alchemy, where it's so much of what we spoke about today, really releasing and letting go of your past, relationships, traumas, limiting beliefs, to really awaken and step into your most embodied, empowered, enlivened self. And we also go into a lot of like the erotic realms too. And that's one-on-one. And then I have a group mentorship that I'm relaunching called Lioness. And this is a lot of a feminine reclamation journey for women to reclaim their power, their pleasure, their sovereignty, and any parts of them where they feel like their life force is being sucked, to bring them back into this place of like true wholeness within. And that is going to be in the beginning of fall. And I'll also be doing some free offerings. So you can find me for some free stuff on Instagram. And my handle is Hanna, HANNA _Dylan, DYLAN _. And I would love to connect with you. You can send me a message. I really love talking to people one-on-one and actually building that intimacy and connection.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing yourself and all your gifts. This was an amazing conversation. I hope y'all got a lot out of this. Thanks again, Hannah. Appreciate it.